Have you ever wondered how a fallen warrior relives his glorious battles? It takes a mad heart and a raging soul to become an MMA fighter, knowing the possible consequences, the irreparable future, yet going all in the quest for battle, glory, and prizes. Don Frye is now a 60-year-old man. He lives with his 2 horses. He has 2 daughters. Loves a good cigar as much as he despises the pain in his back that keeps him from walking straight. Decades ago, he was known as the Predator. He was one of the original UFC fighters, going into battles with many of the men that helped the first brutal years of the Ultimate Fighting to become an underground cult phenomenon. Frye sits on a leather chair in his peaceful property in Catalina, Arizona. In front of him, a TV, a still frame from a fight from many years prior. In the picture, 2 men ready for war with a deadly look in their eyes. One of them is Frye, and the other a Japanese by the name of Yoshihiro Takayama. Memories come in a blur in Don's mind. He feels like he lived it all, but doesn't truly remember. The only thing that he recalls is he was so proud of that battle, even if it changed his and that Japanese man's life. Don Frye takes a deep breath, takes the remote, and presses play. Saitama, Japan. The piping hot summer of '02 has just begun. The stage is set for one of the biggest events in MMA history. Promotion Pride was, at that point in time, the largest combat sports organization in the world. As soon as the first events were held, Pride became bigger by the minute, even surpassing in popularity the American Ultimate Fighting Championship that was struggling to find a place in its own right while battling against state restrictions fueled by prejudice and bigotry. Entering the first years of the new millennium, Pride had become international. And coming to the 21st event of their story, they had to do the biggest show ever. Debuting icons like Fedor Emelianenko and Anderson Silva, the fight card was, as they say, stacked. In the main event, a battle between UFC veterans Don Frye and Mark Coleman. But the latter injured himself 3 weeks prior to the fight. And so, being without one of the biggest assets for the historic night, Pride's organizers were desperate, until a Japanese pro wrestler answered the call. Yoshihiro Takayama was a 6'7" behemoth who started his career in shoot fighting, then making his way in the top pro wrestling promotions like AJPW, Pro Wrestling Noah, and Japan's #1, NJPW. It was in 2001 that he ventured into the brand new world of MMA. Takayama was a no-technique, all-courage type of fighter. Don Frye was an amateur wrestler in high school. He competed in the Arizona State University wrestling team, where he was coached by future UFC legend Dan Severn and participated in the Olympic trials. He had 1 professional boxing match in '89, then started training in judo, and in the mid-90s found his calling in MMA. He made his UFC debut in February 1996 and soon set a record for the then fastest knockout in UFC history. After winning the second Ultimate tournament, he finished his UFC story with a 10-1 record, becoming a fan favorite in the process. Soon understanding the dangers of the mixed martial arts game, he transitioned to a professional wrestling career. With a violent character worthy of his nickname, the Predator, Frye flew to the land of the rising sun, where he soon became one of New Japan Pro Wrestling's top villains. He was a natural in the scene, so valued as a performer that he won a tournament to face NJPW founder Antonio Inoki in his retirement match at the Tokyo Dome, which drew the largest live audience of any pro wrestling event in Japan until then. But as soon as Pride came calling, he was back in the real fighting game. A game that would alter his life permanently. Frye was now insanely popular in Japan, gaining more muscle mass and being as determined as ever to reach the world championship, sporting a US flag on his fighting attire in every occasion after the September 11 attacks. After beating MMA myth Ken Shamrock in a hard-fought split decision that left him with 2 heavily injured ankles and an addiction to painkillers, Don kept going until it was time for Pride 21. And when he learned that he had to face Takayama, he decided that it was going to be brutal. Little did he know that his opponent had the same mentality. On June 23, 2002, both fighters knew that they were going to war, but didn't know how war would leave their souls and bodies in utter devastation. The men are introduced to the sold-out Saitama Arena, and the look on their faces is made of stone. They stare each other down, and it's like they know something, as maybe they've agreed to go all out without backing away from the possible consequences. And that is what truly happened. Before the fight, Takayama went up to Don with a gentleman's agreement. Let's wake up this crowd and risk it all. Don thought Takayama was crazy, but Frye was fighting his last contractual match for Pride, and he said, "F it." As soon as the bell rings, it's sudden, complete mayhem. As Frye immediately catches Takayama with a right and a left, the 6'7" giant pushes the American to the corner, and they both unload punch after punch after punch, rapidly, heavily. Frye, the more experienced striker, hits harder and more precisely, destroying the Japanese's orbital bones in an instant. As the camera closes up on Takayama's battered face, it all seems to be over. But the Japanese finds something deep inside his soul and unexpectedly comes back. He takes down Frye, hits him with a knee and opens a gash on his head. And then back to the big, unrelented, undefended punches. The American loses his mouthguard, punched away by Yoshihiro, and they keep going until Takayama clinches Frye, who starts to control enough for the camera to catch once again the Japanese's now completely disfigured face. The fight is stopped and Takayama is checked by the ringside doctors. He has broken orbital bones, a broken nose, his jaw is dislocated, and he is suffering from a concussion. The crowd is stunned. How was that man still standing? No one truly knew, not even Don Frye. No towel is thrown. The Japanese wants to go back to war, but the pause drained his adrenaline and he now feels the pain all over his face. Another wild exchange, Frye controls, brings his opponent down and finishes him. It would become known as the craziest fight in MMA history. Both men would benefit from the gruesome bout, as Takayama would become IWGP World Heavyweight Champion in 2003, the highest accolade in pro wrestling, and Frye would sign a lucrative contract with Pride with an unbelievable bonus fee. The battle became an instant classic in the Japanese culture. In the 2005 movie Nagurimono, the fight is revisited in a scene where the two foes revive their rivalry for the big screen. The devastating match helped Pride reach its peak of popularity. From launching a video game to becoming a brand known all over the world, the organization gave the audience a glimpse of what the UFC would then become. In war, they respected each other, became friends, gladiators walking on the same path, discovering that they both came from the same stories, the same backgrounds. Don Frye was abused 3 times when he was a child. After surviving, his rage could only be unloaded in fighting, but deep inside he knew what love and compassion truly were. After the Takayama fight, something changed deep inside his soul. He didn't have that rage anymore. That fight drained it away, and he lost. He got KO'd many times. And soon after, his body started to break down. After spinal fusion surgery in 2013, the pain in his back worsened. The rods that kept his spine together broke after a few months, and Don lived with them for years. In 2016, he suffered a brain hemorrhage after enduring his 7th back surgery, and after a month in a coma, he survived. During this time, his wife left him, asking for a divorce. Yoshihiro Takayama kept wrestling for years with success, quitting the MMA scene after finally winning a fight. On May 4, 2017, during a wrestling match for the promotion DDT, Takayama slipped while executing a move called Sunset Flip. He fell on his head and was instantly paralyzed from the neck down. Months later, Don Frye took a plane and flew to Japan. He met his Japanese foe-turned-friend and they started to exchange war stories, remembering how that fight changed their lives forever. After Takayama's retirement by paralysis in 2018, Frye published a message for him. Takayama's son, God gave me the greatest opponents anybody could ever ask for, you. You made the greatest fight the world has ever seen. You are the warrior we all looked to be. Takayama can now stand on his own 2 feet, though barely moving. He trains on an assisted bicycle, and rest assured, he'll never give up. Don Frye now lives a simple life in a 2-acre property in Arizona. He has 2 daughters he loves very much, great friends, and his 2 horses, Puzzle and Funk. Every once in a while, Don Frye takes that remote and presses play. He watches that battle from the start to the finish, and he remembers. He remembers how he doesn't wish he had it any other way.